Alrighty, here we go. So this is by request. I have this code here that loads multiple files, and it's been getting a little bit of traction. And someone was asking me in the comments to post a quick video about working with MATLAB structures. So that's what I'm going to do. So this is that same load multiple excel.m file. It's that same code, and now we're going to add a few things to it to just demonstrate how to work with structures. So suppose that I load in multiple files. So for example, if you're running something and you've got multiple people completing some kind of data collection and you want to pull in data from each individual and add it to a single MATLAB structure, this is how you're going to do it. So we're going to load it in. This is this file list. Get file. It's the same process that we went through before. So we're going to hit that, and we're going to pull in data. Let's say we've got data from 3 separate people. We're going to pull in all of it, right? And that's going to go into a file list up here. And the file list is just the name of each of those individual files. So now we're going to have a loop that goes through each of those files. For each file, it's going to pull out data for that participant, add it to the struct, and then go through the next file or the next participant. Okay, the first thing that we're going to need to do is initialize an empty data structure. So we'll say data struct, and we're just going to set this basically empty. So simple as that. Evaluate that. And now we're going to actually run through the loop. So we're going to go through the length of the file list, which should be 3 because we pulled in 3 files. So there you have it. It is 3. And we're going to get the file name. We're going to then read in that file. It's an Excel, so we're using XLS read. We're going to read that in. Then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to have, we're going to want to get just the subject name or whatever you would want to call this. In our case, it's because it's 3 different subjects or 3 different data collections. We're going to just try to get the first little bit, so subject 1. That's what we're looking for. And so to get that, we're going to say sub ID is equal to file name. And what we want to do is we want to get file name, it's a string, so we want to get the first through, now what you could do is inside of your file list, you could count, S, U, B, you could go from 1 all the way until the end, or because I know that the end of these are all XLSX, I could just say 1 to end minus 5. 4 for the letters here, and then 5 is the period. So we're going to say end minus 5. So that's going to give us the subject ID. And the reason we want the subject ID is because we want to assign a structure field with the subject ID, right? Then you're going to parse the data. So this is going to be the parsing step. It's really annoying. Let me show you. Let me just open one of the files so I can show you what this looks like. Okay, so this comes in, and then we essentially get all of this data here. Okay, and if you scroll down, what you're going to see is the data that we're pulling in is going to end up populating with a bunch of NANs all the way down to the bottom of this data, which is almost 4,000 rows, right? So what we want to do is remove those NANs. They're just annoying, so we're going to remove them. Really simple way to do this is to just go here, remove NANs, and say LHS, and then is NAN, pass LHS into that, and then we're going to set that equal to empty. All right, simple as that. So this will remove all of the NANs or replace all of the NANs with just an empty cell in LHS, and then we're going to do that for our other 3. This is LTO, LTO, this is RHS, RHS, and RTO, RTO. Okay, so let's just recap real quick. So we've used UI get file to select the files that we want to bring in. We initialized an empty data structure that's going to collect all of our data. And then we ran a loop that is going to call in the file name. So it's a loop for the number of files that we have. It's going to call in the file name. It's going to load that file using XLS read. We're then going to just get the file name, the subject, which in our case is a subject ID. We're going to parse the data. So once you have the file in, we're going to say this column is this piece of data. In this case, the second column is LHS. The third column is LTO. The fourth column is RHS. And the fifth column of that data that comes in is RTO. Then we remove the NANs from that. This isn't this NAN removal isn't absolutely necessary, but I just wanted to do it because having all those NANs is, in my opinion, kind of ugly. So now we want to get to the meat of this. Okay, so how do you take this data and add it to a data structure in a way that makes sense? Well, what you do is you call in the data struct. This is that empty structure that we initialized above. And when you want to create fields, you use a period, and then you enter the field name like this, and then you would set it equal to whatever you want it to be. Okay, so you need to just sit down before you write code to do this. You need to think about what you want your structure to look like. In our case, what we want it to look like is we want to have a data structure. And when you open that structure, you want to see each of your participants. And then when you open one of the participants, you want to see all of your data. Okay, so what we need to do is add the subject ID right here. Now, this is going to be dynamic because it's going to change on every part of the loop. When you have a dynamic field, you need to close it in parentheses. Okay, so we're going to add sub ID here. So this is then going to put the subject's ID, which is what we got up here on line 20. And then we want to call the variable name, right? So when you open it, you want the variable name to be here. And we're just going to set that equal to LHS, okay? So let me just run this loop and show you what we end up getting. Now it's going to take a while to load because it's got to call XLS read, load in those massive files 3 separate times. Running. And another nice thing about this is that you're going to be able to save the structure as a mat file, which is going to reduce the runtime on a lot of this. XLS read is expensive in time to run. All right, now let's take a look at our data struct to see what we have. We should have 3 subjects. There they are. And then within each subject, you should be able to go in and you should have the data that you pulled in. There it is. And you'll see too that there's not 4,000 rows because we moved the NANs, right? And you can go back into the data struct. You can go into subject 3 and pull it in, and you can see that that's different data. So here's subject 1, and here's subject 3. So you've successfully done that. Now what you want to do is the same thing for the other 3 variables. So this was LTO. We want to set that equal to LTO. And then we had RHS, and then RTO and RTO, right? And then that's going to do the same thing for you. So it would just add all of that data to the structure. So let's run that again. Again, it's going to take a few seconds here. And then after this runs, we're going to briefly just go through how to access the data within the structure. And again, you see how long this is taking to run these loops. If it's a mat structure, it's able to do it much faster. So that's one thing. This is one use case for this. If you have a ton of like CSV or Excel files and you want to combine them into a single data file, this MATLAB structure is a great way to do that. All right, now let's take a look at the struct. Let's get rid of all these other ones that we had opened before. So the same thing, and then you can go into a subject, and then there's all of your variables, right? So that's great. All right, now suppose that you wanted to pull LHS out of this data structure. So you access it the same way that you saved to it. So we'll say data struct dot, let's say you want to pull it for subject 1, and you want LHS. You can run that, and there's your LHS, right? So pretty simple. Now suppose you needed to automate this process. One of the things that so let's say you have a data structure and you don't know how many participants it's going to be. Well, pretty simple. Field names, and let's pass data struct into that. All right, so field names, data struct, boom, gives you a cell array. Okay, so if you need to automate, what you could do is you could say, you could create a variable for field names, call it fnames. We'll run fnames. Okay, well now you can run a loop I equal to 1 through the length of fnames. All right, and if we look at length fnames, it's 3. So you know that there's 3 subjects in there. And then let's just say we wanted to let's just print fnames. Boom, look at that. Okay, so there you have it. Now let's say you wanted to call out that data. So now we say data struct dot fnames and because it's a cell, you actually need to use squiggly brackets, I dot LHS. All right, let's run this. It should print out 3 LHS. Let's see if it did it. So there's the first answer. That's our subject number 3. There's our second, and there's our first, right? So it went through each one, and it printed that onto the screen. So there you go. That's how you add things to a struct and then access a struct. Hope this was helpful. Again, I got this. Someone asked for it through the comments, so I really appreciate that. Feel free to keep asking me how to do things, and if I'm able to, I will try to create a video for it. All right, take it easy.